inviting me on today to share some of the activities that I've been really excited about over the past few years. My name's Margaret Hamilton and I work for SGN. I'm part of the Stakeholder Engagement team. So my expertise is not in plant protection and safety, but I support different areas of the business with stakeholder engagement, and the damage prevention group at SGN is certainly one of them. My background has always been horses and dogs, so I've mixed in the agricultural society for a long time. And when I came to SGN and started talking to the plant protection officers, I began to ask them, you know, why do you not do this and why do you not do that? And although they have their business as usual activities with the agricultural sector, the initiatives that I've brought to the table have been over and above. So if we can just bear that in mind today, it is beyond business as usual that I'm going to talk about. Before I came on today and was collating the information that I was going to talk about, Richard shared an article from Fisher German around agricultural engagement, which I found very thought-provoking, and I am going to refer to that a few times today, and the gentleman who wrote it, I believe, is on the call today, so it'll be nice to get some conversation going around some of the differences that we have. But the opening line is that agriculture is a difficult industry to infiltrate, and I think we all agree with that. They're one of our more hard to reach stakeholder groups. So what I brought to the table was first and foremost collaboration with partners. And obviously during the past year we've had to adapt to COVID, and I want to talk a little bit about how we've done that. But also from that opening line, really talking about how to get into the heart of the communities rather than be viewed as a corporate organisation, you know, giving instruction and having a sort of negative relationship. How we want to turn that around, or how we've managed to turn that around in certain areas and actually get into the heart of the communities. Sorry, I'm just going to take a sip of water. Again, Fisher German have sort of noted that these groups that are umbrella organisations for the agricultural communities are not liked by everyone, and not everyone is a member. But our objective is to get our reach much wider than we can manage, and by using what I would call sort of trusted partners, we can do that. So we've partnered with the likes of the National Farmers Union, who have over 9,000 members alone in Scotland, the Scottish Association for Young Farmers and their equivalent in England, who again have in Scotland alone over 80 clubs. And also, not to forget, the more local agricultural societies. We've targeted areas where our encroachments are at their highest. And for instance, one small agricultural society has over 5,000 followers on social media for their own organisation, but they also partner with organisations that we don't, for instance, Rural Watch and other organisations like that. So the objective for us is to widen the reach for our message. So we know that not every farmer will be a member of the National Farmers Union, not every young person on farms will be a member of the Young Farmers Association, but if we can get our reach wider, then that's ticking a box for us. And it's also all about brand awareness. The more they see our logo and hear our message, hopefully that will make them think to contact us before they start to do any work. Now, just some examples of things we've done with the National Farmers Union. The first thing they wanted us to do to enable us to launch that partnership was create a Grantors Charter. And that is basically just a code of practice to outline what's expected from farmers and landowners, and equally what's expected from us when we're on their land. That was eventually signed off. Now, these things don't happen overnight. I think it took 3 years to get that created, go through legal and be signed off. And it was launched last year. It was probably one of the last face-to-face engagements we did prior to COVID. And what we did was stood in a very windy farmer's field where there was a high pressure pipeline with ourselves, members of the NFU, and also the NFU themselves to launch this Grantors Charter. Another thing we do with them is attend some of the monthly meetings of the regional managers, because these regional managers have relationships with their own members in the area, And what we've found in the past is if there's any dispute, maybe over drainage issues or work being done in the land, they can act for us and their member as a mediator. And we've sat down round the table, discussed the issue, and it's just been nice to have a sort of, independent body there to look at both sides and help us reach an agreement. So we've used it for that on quite a few occasions. And also most recently, when we're doing our line walks, we've been using the regional managers to warm up the members that we're going to be in the area, we're going to be coming onto the land, and this is what's expected. So again, it's just having that extra body there to assist us do the work that we do, in a nice manner and turn that relationship around. Also, Young Farmers Association, you probably know it's kind of gone, and it's been agreed in this article, from an educational organisation to more of a social one. However, we've got to have that balance, and for them it's all about, having competitions, having their annual conferences. There's money required to run all of that, and we don't like to call it sponsorship because that's more difficult to get through our own business for funding. We call it partnerships. So what we've been doing with the Young Farmers Association is partnering them at larger agricultural shows like the Royal Highland Show in Scotland, and we use their platform because it brings the right audience to our door. What we feel is if we have a standalone sort of exhibition, then you'll have a lot of town people coming and we won't necessarily get the right audience. So by partnering with the young farmers and being part of their banners and logos and literature that are given out at these agricultural shows, then at least we're getting the right audience to the door, so we can check we have the right data on our database. We can check if these people have pipelines running through their land, and our pipeline officers can get to know the people in their area a little bit better. We also look to sponsor pages on their website, for instance, the safety page. They always need finance to upgrade the website and keep things up to date, and it helps if we can make a donation and sponsor their safety page, getting our message across, and again having that logo there. We also sponsor during things like Farm Safety Week, and last year they had a Farm Safety Isolation Challenge, which we were too late to influence, but moving forward we're hoping that possibly this year that Farm Safety Isolation Challenge will possibly be around damage awareness and safety, working around utility assets. So there's an opportunity to get in there from an educational perspective as well. And again, I've spoken about the local agricultural societies. Again, we can't do it across the board, but if we target the areas where our encroachments are at their highest, then we can get into the heart of that community by having an exhibition stand at their local agricultural show. These shows have been going for many, many years. They've been run by generation after generation. It is an honour for a farmer to be chairman of that show for the 2 or 3 years that happens. They want to leave a legacy by getting someone like a major utility organisation on board that will sponsor that show year after year. Now, it costs pennies to have a stand there, so as well as giving them maybe the £25 they want for a space, we look to sponsor the whole agricultural section. So that means that we can provide a trophy with the SGN name on it. We provide sashes so that the winning beast will have the photograph taken with an SGN sash on. We have SGN rosettes. We offer to give out the prizes, and that's a big area of these shows. We wear our SGN t-shirts, and that means that every single photograph that's in the local newspaper following the agricultural show has an SGN representative in that photograph. So they then look for that sponsorship year after year. And it's gone from doing our first one and having farmers and landowners avoiding the stand like the plague. They now seek us out, come to speak to us. They've made that relationship with their local pipeline officer. You know, I've heard them coming in and saying, I'm thinking about doing work in this area, can you come out and see me? And we'll go through a risk assessment, etc, etc. And that's music to our ears. And yes, it's taken a few years to get to that stage. But it is one of the areas where we feel is still heavily supported by the agricultural community as a whole, and they do welcome our input there. So that's just some examples of how we've tried to get into the heart of the communities. And obviously during COVID, we've missed all of that in the past year. We've not been able to support the local agricultural shows. We've not been able to join up with the young farmers at the larger agricultural shows. So what we've had to do is develop digital campaigns in partnership again with these organisations. Now we've included a damage prevention awareness film. We've pushed that out through targeted events like Farm Safety Week, and in particular LSBUD's National Damage Prevention Day last year, where we partnered with the NFU, the young farmers, the local agricultural associations and other utilities. And although our campaign was gas related, they've adapted it to suit their own needs and also tagged on the back of our messages. Now, just to give you an idea of the reach on National Damage Prevention Day, we used Facebook and we had over 5,500 people reached. We had 200 engagements. That means people have either liked or shared. And the one that amazed me was LinkedIn. It certainly wasn't a platform we've used in the past, but we were assured by some of these partners that LinkedIn was a route to push our message out through. And sure enough, we got over 4,000 impressions, including over 1,068 video views. So that's over 1,000 people we wouldn't have reached had we not listened to these partners and utilised that platform. Twitter as well gave us another good reach, over 2,500 impressions, over 60 engagements and over 500 video views. So again, without partnering with these organisations, our reach would have been much less. And as I said, we've pushed this out through National Farm Safety Week. Last year, as I say, we were a bit late to influence the isolation challenge, but what we did was make a video giving them a good luck message. So again, that got our branding out there and it got our message out there. So hopefully that's just given you a taster of some of the things that we have implemented over the past few years. And it would be really good to hear from you guys as to what other things we could be doing, what other organisations we could perhaps be partnering with, and just generally what other channels can we use to get the use of LSBUD across to these people. Thank you.
Margaret, I think I'm exhausted listening to that list. I mean, it sounds like you've been doing it, everything. So it's been that eye-opening. I think it's been a really interesting to see all the different things. And I think that the sort of tone of what you were saying of making sure that you're engaging with people. You know, you're not just going to an event. It's trying to get people to come to you and want to speak to you. And I think that's so important that to do that. And I think I've got a list of questions myself, but just whilst others maybe get some questions together, you said that you were focusing on areas where there were more encroachments.
Yes.
Does that, how big a driver is the data behind what you do, and how can others learn from that?
Yeah, well, I think certainly from our organisation, we are issued data every month of where the encroachments have been, what or who, whether it be farmers, landowners, third-party contractors, local authorities, and what was used for that. And what we found when we started to do this was the biggest encroachments were on farmland, and the biggest encroachments were mechanical excavators. And that's the other thing you find at these agricultural shows, is that a lot of the other sponsors are the local contractors, because these farm communities are reaching out to the people they know to support these shows. So generally they either have a stand there to promote their works, so that gives us an opportunity to also approach them. But also at the majority of these small agricultural shows, you actually have the digger driver there with his digger, allowing children to have a go and be able to move something from one area to another. So you're able to speak to them direct, you're able to share some literature, which I know I've passed on some that will maybe talk about the tone of these today. So you're not just getting to the agricultural community, you're actually getting to the real people that are doing the work for them as well, and building relationships with them. And it also means for our pipeline operators, they're so used to going out and approaching people either in a reactive way or knowing that, you know, they're coming down heavy with procedures, policy and procedures. It's giving them another approach. You know, they're getting to know these people from a different angle. They're getting to know them because they come and support the shows. I'm supporting them. It's not the other way around. And they look forward every day to attending these shows. They come and ask me for the dates at the beginning of the year so that they can keep those Saturdays free, because the majority of them are at the weekend. So it's been good for the pipeline operators as well to give them a new approach when they are going out to speak to farmers and landowners as well.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, because I think it's clear with farmers and a lot of people generally that safety and considering pipeline awareness is not the first thing they get up in the morning thinking about. No. And it's about sort of infiltrating your message into a long list of other things of influences that they have to consider.
Yeah, if we can just get them to consider us as one of those other things they need to consider. Interestingly, I was approached yesterday by it's like a tongue twister, Yellow Wellies Foundation, who run a safety campaign. I think it's the only one that is targeted at young farmers. So they have a big safety training awareness campaign running next month, and they've asked us for some input. And interestingly, when they shared the presentation with me, sorry, they mention overhead cables, but there's no mention of buried utilities. Yeah. So at the moment, what I've done is gone through their whole presentation and identified areas that we can add value. And one of them is a slide where they have phone numbers to put in your phone. Now, albeit they're very simple ones like 105 for power cuts, but if we can get a plant protection phone number installed into people's phone and get it in that list of considerations that they need to think about before they start to do a job, then that's us taking another step in the right direction. Yeah, and obviously my conversation today is around gas pipelines, but also just to let you know, I'm working with UCOPA at the moment to make all of the things we do more generic for all pipeline operators. Yeah,
makes sense. I think it's clear that a landowner, if they've got an SGN pipe across their land, they don't see it massively different, I don't believe, to speak to the gas company or the electric company or anyone else that might have something crossing their assets. They want a combined approach if it's all possible.
It would help all round if we had a combined approach.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Ian, so I can see on the screen, I thought I'd put you on the spot. How does that accord with your experience of landowner liaison?
So I speak to about 1,000 landowners personally every 2 years. Yeah, they're difficult people to deal with sometimes. You've got 3 generations of the same family often, and granddad is in charge of the farm, but it's really the younger generation that you need to speak to. And also, I think there's been an increase in people going to agricultural colleges and doing apprenticeships. So we can get to those younger people at the start of their agricultural careers. Well, in my opinion, when I went to agricultural college, and I went twice, we got an hour at the beginning of a 3-year course and an hour at the beginning of a 4-year course, and that was it for the rest of the duration, the 7 years that I was in agricultural college. I think you need to, with your training, you need to instill that risk assessments are part of any job. And they don't have to go to the farm office or to the back of a tractor to get a big file out. It's something that they're doing mentally, and they just do it before they handle livestock, before they do fencing, drainage, operate machinery. We can train people to think that way prior to doing any kind of farm work. Then I think, you know, we'll be on the right track.
Yeah, Ian, we have in the past 4 or 5 years been delivering a safety module to all the agricultural colleges in Scotland. And we've found it more difficult to infiltrate down south, but at the moment we're working with UCOPA to make that happen. Now, at the moment, you're absolutely right. It is driven by us. and we appear every year to deliver a module to first year agricultural students around pipeline safety. But what we are trying to do is, once we get this more generic for all pipeline operators, is target the governing bodies for farm education. There's been a group pulled together in Scotland with representatives from every college, and our objective is exactly what you're saying, is to have this as an actual module in the curriculum that covers farm safety awareness, and so that we don't need to drive it every year and make sure we can go along and do this presentation, but to make sure it's actually installed in the curriculum as a matter of course. Now, at the moment, we're having to change to online learning, and that's what we're doing right at this moment in time, is having the PowerPoint presentation and videos that we normally present made into e-learning. And we're working with the colleges to do that, to make sure it's a compatible format from what they use just now. But as I say, moving forward, we hope to take that stand back, still offer face-to-face training, because what they want a lot of the time is real life scenario, maybe mock incidents, for us to deliver that training on the field, which we've done in the past. It's not a classroom education. They need to be out, they need to be looking at pipeline markers, they need to be able to identify the areas, not only where they're doing their own work, but other sort of dangers like land movement and things like that, that they can spot maybe a danger to a pipeline and report that in. So it is something that we're really pushing to do, and I am lucky that I do have UCOPA assisting with that at the moment as well.
And yeah, as ever, if there's, I'd love to hear some more comments from others that might have experience in this sector, or others, and any sort of comparisons that can be made. But Margaret, you said about the tone of messaging, and striking the right tone. I presume a sort of element of assertion, and but not sort of a dictatorial kind of tone. It's really interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I would actually like feedback from the group, because it is an area, again, that Ian, you've covered in your article. Obviously, a lot of the things I've been talking about has been the light approach, and then there also is the other side with compliance and everything. And we do need to strike that balance. And I did share before this session some of the literature that we've developed, and these are generally to hand out at the agricultural shows. And also we have a small credit card sized handout that we give to students, and we give out at the agricultural shows, that we're hoping that they can just stick in their wallet or their phone and have it to hand. As we say, we don't want them having to go back to the farm office to go through files. We want something that's instant, that they can relate to. So obviously there's all the compliance, and there's the legal aspect that has to be, you know, relayed, but we also want it to be readable. We want them to actually pick it up and read it in the first instance, and also really easy to follow, but getting that message across. And as I say, it would just be interesting to get some feedback on what our literature looks like in comparison to your own literature.
Yeah, Murray, have you got any thoughts on that from your experience with the Line Watch operation?
Yeah, I think you've got to cover some really interesting points there, Margaret, and that one you've just had on the screen there, Richard, the charter with the NFU. I think that's really interesting. We've sort of not struggled with some of the agricultural colleges down here in the south, but they are notoriously difficult to get into. So it'd be nice to have a bit of feedback and see how you get on with UCOPA. I know you've been doing some work in Scotland.
Yeah. There is an overall organisation that work with land-based colleges, and they have 39 college members at the moment. So they're our starting point. Right. And I know we're never going to reach everyone, but if we can widen our reach, and that's how we look at it, if we can widen that reach in any way at all, then that's what we want to do. Now, we're not the experts in the education field, and we know that, and so that's why we need to reach out to the experts. So we have been lucky. It's just been coincidence that I'm based in Scotland, and I was stakeholder lead for the damage prevention group, that everything happened in Scotland first to be replicated in Southern. But actually, it appears in everything we do, it's more difficult south of the border for some unknown reason. You know, even local authorities work in different ways, government works in different ways. Everybody seems much more accessible in Scotland.
Yeah, you mentioned the Royal Highland Show. We were there not last year, the year before.
Yeah,
we had a stand, and we did see the SGN stand. It was inside, right, with there was a safety hub.
That was with the young farmers.
Yeah. We had a couple of your chaps go up onto the Line Watch stand, which
all
was
right, good,
nice.
good.
But yeah, I've found it notoriously difficult down here, and also with the NFU as well. Sometimes they can be quite difficult. So I've sort of took a slightly different approach with reaching out to the contractors more, so the people that are actually doing the works, and that seems to go down quite well. But yeah, really interesting. Some interesting food for thought there.
Yeah, so we've obviously spoken about education in the agricultural community. So does anybody know, is there opportunity to bring this same sort of education to the training bodies for the contractors?
Yeah,
I'm just currently in liaisons with IOSH, so the Rural Industries Group, and we're looking at putting some presentations and safety shares out amongst their members. But we're just in the early stages of that.
Okay.
If there's anyone on the call that does any training courses on a sort of regular basis that could add comment to that, I think that would be helpful, because I think the consistency across all different contractors, because I think contractors can be working in agriculture, they can be working in industrial settings. There's such a range of contractor training, but consistency across them would be a sensible thing. I think we've got two hands up, one from Ian and then next up from Andrew. So Ian, if I could ask you, I think yours was up first.
Yeah, just to say we've got a bit of a two-pronged attack. So when I visit landowners, I don't specifically have my own leaflets. I would use Line Watch's literature and hand those out. The other thing that we do is all farmers that we visit, landowners, householders, get a pair of work gloves with our phone number emblazoned in large numbers across the top. We also get the Line Watch calendar sent out to landowners every year, and it's got our phone number emblazoned along the bottom in large numbers again. And it's one of the ways that farmers do realise how they can contact us. They get a series of funny cartoons with pipeline safety and awareness on, and it's one of the first things that they always mention when we visit a farm is the calendar.
Yeah, I think we had that conversation on the National Damage Prevention Day, where I did say that our comms department had 1 year tried to pull the calendar, and there was absolute uproar about it. They said that stakeholders did not want an A3 calendar to hang on their fridge. They wanted something digital, and we had a real battle on our hands to get that reinstalled for the next year. And ironically, while that battle was going on, and we did manage to get it turned around and the calendar sent out the following year, we had a great PR opportunity when Philip Schofield received his SGN calendar and did talk about it. I think he said something like, you know, Christmas is coming when you get your SGN safety calendar, and actually went through. So fantastic bit of PR for us. But we had a real challenge at one point with the organisation to continue with that.
And we get a diary that goes out as well, and the farmers love those because they can put them in the top pocket of their boiler suits.
Yeah, it's quite amazing the power of something like a calendar, and really interesting to hear that sort of internal battle, Margaret. Of so yeah, it's not the newest idea, you know, it's by any stretch, but so effective.
But it works, yeah.
Yeah, really good.
So traditionally, the feed companies would have sent them out at Christmas, but they've stopped doing it now, and we're probably the only people sending them out, and it does get a bit of attention.
No, very good. Andrew, I think you had a question.
Yeah, a couple of points really, but just to add on to what's just been said, then sadly, not all organisations, the own apparatus, take the same view about the calendars and the things. And you're absolutely right, Margaret. depending on where the decision making on these things, the budget holder that covers these things sits in connection with the benefits of it, the further away from it they are, the less likely they are to make a positive decision. You've really got to be pretty close to that feedback, to that impact, negative and positive, of what those bits of information provide, in order to make those decisions properly. And we've seen a large organisation this year pull it for financial reasons, and we get that entirely. It's not a never do it again, but it's not. It didn't happen this last year, and the negative feedback from that's been pretty substantial from their grantors. The couple of points I got to make really were, the first one was about the education point, and it's something that I've been interested in for quite some time, and in fact on some of my visits over to the States, to the CGA conference, I've always tried to attend. There's always a lecture, a presentation on education, and I've always tried to attend it. And actually, interesting, and this has been going on for probably 20 years now, one of the main targets that the industry over there in the States has moved its attention to isn't just agricultural colleges. It's taking it a lot further down the education trail to those rural schools at primary level, to have some input at that level. And there's been a lot of work done on educational psychology over there on this thing, and the understanding is that actually to get this embedded, it's a generational task. It's a 25-year task, and you've got to start at those 5-year-olds to get that information at the right level. And it isn't about putting exploding pipes and people being fried in front of them and stuff like that. It's about getting it at the right level. And building on that from that very, very simple touch, early engagement, right through that generation. So when they, the two elements to that, the first one is that obviously they're going to hold that knowledge for hopefully through their lives. But secondly, the pester power of children in getting their parents to think about these things is also proved to be very, very positive. And the second point I've got really is I guess to do with the NFU, but to do with the bit of the NFU that isn't actually the NFU, and that's the NFU insurance. Yes. Which doesn't have any really connection with the NFU at all anymore. That some years ago we managed to through some pretty positive engagement with the NFU insurance, get them to put a clause in their insurance documentation that required their members to do a utility search before they did their work, with the basic view that if they didn't do it, then that was some wriggle room for the insurers to turn around and say, well, hang on a minute, guys, you know, you've damaged this thing, you're making a claim for 10,000 quid for repairing it or whatever, but you didn't do any searches. I think we might not cover you for this. But we've not been able to get any further with the rest of the insurance world. And there aren't that many who provide rural insurance, rural contractor insurance, rural landowner insurance anymore. That market has thinned out significantly over the last 10 years to a handful of operators, but they just don't want to engage at all. And I think it comes back to the point that was being said a bit earlier, that unless really we can all get together, we will not have the power and authority to engage at the right level with these organisations to make them sit up and do something, because they see that there's a real sort of strength of opinion and support from the industry, across industry. Yeah.
So does that clause still stand for NFU?
Yeah, if you pick up an NFU, I don't know whether it does in NFU Scotland, but certainly in NFU in England, if you pick up an NFU insurance policy, there's a clause in there that requires you to make a utility search before you break ground.
Good, that's interesting.
I think for those of us homeschooling, the terms pester power of children has never been quite so apt. Stephen, I think you've got your hand up.
Yeah, I did. It was just to respond back to Andrew about the point about getting them young to a certain extent. That one of the things that SGN actually takes part in is it's an event every year called Safe Taysiders, and what that is it's primary 7 school children just as they're about to embark up to high school in the sort of Perth Tayside area in Scotland. So it is a very rural area, and they bring in all the local primary schools or their P7 pupils across a week, and they get various different talks across the day that they're in. And there's ourselves, there's Scottish Power, Scottish Water, and excuse me, the part of the talks that they get is on generic gas safety, and they are pushed when you go home, speak to your parents about this as well. So a lot of them will be coming from potentially agricultural families. So hopefully that gives you that push back that they're able to go back to their parents and say, oh, we had this talk about safety round about gas pipes and electric cables and overhead cables. And there, as I say, there's various different organisations are involved in these. So these have proven to be quite a good avenue to get that sort of push back and sort of speak to the younger ones and hopefully just plant that seed in there that they will think about these things.
Yeah, I think it's so powerful, that message. I remember I also went over to the CJA conference, and there was a booklet on the 811 system, and I left it in the back of the car, and the kids had picked it up and they started chanting the 811 number at me, and it does, and that's the number you dial in the States to do the same thing as LSBUD does. And it is powerful because when you hear it from your kids, it does strike a chord that other things don't. So I totally see that. A couple of things that have just been raised as an organisation, it is very, very difficult to show the immediate or any kind of payback to some costly kind of investment in engagement. Margaret, probably one for you mainly, but for others on the call as well to contribute. When these decisions are being made about where to spend money and resources on engaging areas of society or industry, there must be massive pressure on showing some return for that. And when we're talking about speaking to primary school children, that could be quite some time to get some payback. Not asking for anything specific at SGN, but how have you dealt with that? That sort of challenge?
Yeah, well, obviously safety always comes first, and I think that's why it's been I wouldn't say easy, but we've managed to infiltrate a lot of these organisations and colleges, because we do first and foremost go to the head of environment and health and safety, where they find it very difficult not to embrace what you're bringing to the table. And also it's the same within the organisation. So we're very lucky. All of the utilities over the past 5 years would have had a stakeholder engagement incentive from Ofgem, where we have to demonstrate every year how we have engaged with stakeholders, listened to their feedback, and obviously adapted our business practices to suit. And the stakeholder engagement team have always had a budget for engagement, and any initiatives that we want to put forward, we have to demonstrate by filling in a template demonstrating, why we want to do this, what the return is for the organisation, not in financial. It doesn't always need to be from a financial aspect. It can be just because it is the right thing to do. So some of the early initiatives were funded by the stakeholder engagement group, because actually the damage prevention group didn't hold a budget of its own, ironically, but we're looking to change that moving forward. But also the maintenance department, where the pipeline operators officers work from, were very, very supportive of the work that I was trying to push through. And the way that they look at it is that what it costs us to push out this engagement is minimal in comparison, not even to dealing with an incident, but just to dealing with an encroachment. If someone has to take the time to go out, speak to farmers, landowners, contractors, the cost that it takes to do that far outweighs what it's cost for us to develop some leaflets, spend a day at an agricultural show on a Saturday, you know, get into the colleges and develop a PowerPoint presentation. The videos we use are there. Some of them are taken from YouTube. Some have already been developed within the organisation for other purposes. So it's tended not to cost us, you know, massively. Somebody has asked me in the past for a ballpark figure, and I've not been able to do that as yet. But just in comparison to what the cost would be to having to deal with an encroachment or an incident is absolutely minimal in comparison. And as I say, we've been very lucky because SGN's stakeholder engagement team are very supportive of the organisation and vice versa. And I have been allowed to spend a lot of time pushing these initiatives through. Now we're just about to move into our new price control, and stakeholder engagement incentive has now gone. Basically that past 5 years have been used to embed it throughout the business. So the actual incentive has been taken away, and it should be installed in every part of the organisation, who should now, as just a matter of course, be carrying out the stakeholder engagement incentive. But we have made a commitment to reduce third-party damage. So we need to continue with this work to make sure that we are doing everything we can in order to reach that target.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. Ian and Andrew, I think you've got your hands up. I presume that's from the previous, yeah, lingering hands. Yeah, so yeah, really open up the floor to others to come in with questions, really. But I think because of I think it's been a really wide-ranging discussion. If there's anyone else that's got anything, please do shout. It'd be great to hear others' experience from experience out in the field. If you've got that. Oh, sorry.
I'll put my hand up. Phil here. Phil from Utility Strike Avoidance Group. So obviously we're a collaborative group across all really across all sectors. So from the contractors to the power utilities to gas as well. And we run kind of social media campaigns and stuff to get the message out there. And one thing that our members of the group are particularly interested in, again, is real life situations and safety alerts and lessons learned documents. So you mentioned there about the cost of, you know, an encroachment and the investigations that have to go on and take place. So it'd be good if we can get stuff like that from you, or indeed any other safety campaigns that you're running. And that's another method for you to get that out to certainly the excavation industry. We've got, you know, we've got coming up on 4,000 different touch points with different people and sectors of the industry. So probably that's just a thing from USAG, is that if you've got any real life scenarios, you know, like a case study of what an encroachment, what happens, what you have to do, or any incidents as well, and any safety campaigns. If you could just let us at USAG know, and I'm quite happy for us to run that for you.
Phil, I can take that to our damage prevention group, and I'll bring that back to USAG. Yeah, so really, I mean, anybody within the in the wider group that's on the call here, if you've got anything going on, you know, let us know at USAG. I can we'll get the email address to you that you can send that through to, and yeah, we can take it from there.
That'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks, Phil.
Okay, thanks.
I suppose the last question I've probably got, Margaret, is where I think the Grantors Charter probably covers it, but we've known of examples in the past where a interaction with a landowner maybe a decade before has had a lasting impact, and some hopefully positive, but sometimes can be very negative if someone's fallen out with them. You know, if you had to go and repair a pipe or do anything like that. Do you have any experience of that in your role, Margaret, from really challenging landowner sort of feelings based on previous works?
Not personally. I don't tend to get involved with that side of the business directly, because we do have land liaison officers who carry out that role. And yes, I do know they have had a lot of challenges on a regular basis, and I'm sure they would have some stories to share. But personally, I'm not in contact with them in that context. I tend to sort of coordinate and facilitate all the engagement and support the guys on the day. It's our pipeline operators who deliver the safety modules to the colleges, because they can really bring it to life by using experiences that they've had, and you get a lot of interactions from the students who can relate to that with, you know, stories of what's happened on their farm in the past. And I'll always be there to make sure I do all the sort of official things, like make sure we've got the attendance records for MI to prove that we've carried this out. They do set a multiple choice questionnaire at the end. They do get a completion certificate. So I sort of deal with all that stuff and deal with the colleges to get the dates for doing that. But it's the pipeline officers who have all the real life stories behind them. Yeah,
no, I can imagine there's a few anecdotes in there that that would get some smiles. Okay, I think we normally say that they last between 45 minutes and an hour, so I think we're in that sort of in that zone. I think what would be really helpful, just in case anyone's got some sort of burning questions at the end, if I just share this. So as ever, please do share any feedback. I know we found it very, very interesting today on all the different things that SGN are doing and spearheading in Scotland and the southeast. So if you can provide any ideas, I know that Margaret was very interested to know, you know, have you found today's event useful? And so please either email us in or just put it on the chat. The answers to these two questions really is because it is really important to Margaret in her role. And if you can share your thoughts on that as whether you found it useful and whether it's added value to your own practices, processes, and whether you could see yourself adopting any of the engagement methods. And I presume, Margaret, if anyone would want to collaborate and do anything together, then that would be a pretty open door, I would have thought, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. I'm happy for you to share my contact details. If you want to chat to me about anything that I've spoken about today, more than happy to help. Lovely, but yeah, I don't think you don't need a lot of words, Margaret. It's just some feedback would be fantastic. And that would be great. Thank you. And so the next session we have is in another 3 weeks' time, and that's going to be Pete Ashcroft from Sigma Solutions and talking about getting the best out of plans. And I think that's something that's obviously close to LSBUD's heart in making sure that people understand what's put on the plan, what's displayed, and how to, you know, what assumptions you can make and what assumptions you shouldn't make. So hopefully that's another area of once people have been engaged with and using the LSBUD service and engaging with the asset owners of how to read what they get back properly. Okay, so I think that probably draws us to a close. Thank you very much indeed for everyone joining today. As I say, if you can either put it in the chat on the meeting or email us, please do that, because it's just a small thing to ask for. Margaret giving up her time today and preparing today. As I say, found it very, very interesting, Margaret, and thoroughly thank you for your time this morning. Thank you. Thank you very much, and look forward to hearing all that feedback flowing in and seeing you in the next chat in 3 weeks' time.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Margaret.
Everybody. Very useful.
Cheers.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.